Yeah, Kindle is like an email address you can send stuff to, and send it to your device. So I just log into Gmail from there, forwarded it. Because I first tried downloading it, and then re-forwarding it took like an hour and drained half my battery. Okay.
Here we go. About 10 seconds.
All right.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Break It track. This is Saturday morning at Shmoocon. I'm John Callis. I'm a member of the Shmoo Group. Our first talk of today is Virtual Worlds, Real Exploits. The speakers are Charlie Miller of Independent Security Evaluators. He is one of the best people that I know of at breaking things. You have probably know him yourselves from breaking the iPhone this summer. And also Dino Dai Zovi, who did a really good Mac hack at CanSec West. So I will hand things over to them, and please.
Cool. All right, is this thing on? Okay, cool. Well, thank you everyone for showing up this morning. I wasn't even sure if I was going to make it here by 10 o'clock, so I'm surprised this many people are here. We're talking about running exploits in virtual worlds. And of course, we must start off with the, actually a great quote from Snow Crash. Deals a lot about this with, virtual worlds and sort of hacking within them. So, okay, we'll skip through it. I guess I won't read the quote.
They can read the book if they want.
You can read the book if you want. If you haven't, you should. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about, just give you an overview of virtual worlds. How many of you have a Second Life, World of Warcraft account and actively use it? It's a pretty good number, and I'm not talking to people who have never heard of this stuff. Our research focuses mostly on Second Life, and so we'll talk a little bit more about that for the people who are either A, unfamiliar with it, or B, unwilling to admit that they have an account on it. And then we're going to talk exactly. Talk about the vulnerability that we use to actually take advantage of this, and sort of some of the exploitation and payload technology that we did. And then we'll do a demo. But with those of you with laptops, if you have a Second Life account, you can actually log in and watch us do the exploit. So
And if you don't have an account, there's enough time during the talk. You can start downloading now, and you can be ready and just head over to the spot and you can watch it.
Yeah, we really want to see other people there. I think it'd be really cool. We won't own you, assuming your QuickTime is patched.
Yeah, we put up signs around it, so just don't go inside the sign area, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, and inside the signs is a radioactive area. Be careful. But going, with Bruce Potter's theme from the opening remarks, I have a pet peeve against video demos because you never know, are they truly real? It's so many hand waving it could be possible. So we decided live demo. You can watch. You can even connect to the web server and see the exploit come at you. But if the exploit fails, we'll show you a video, just in case.
It won't.
It won't. It'll be fine. So there's been an explosion of virtual worlds over the last couple of years, sort of for a variety of purposes. World of Warcraft, I think a lot of people have heard of this. Apparently it's pretty popular. My favorite currently at the moment is called VLES. It's a virtual Lower East Side named after the neighborhood in New York City. So you can go there. It's kind of like trying to be MySpace for musicians in the virtual world. So you can take your avatar dressed up in total hipster gear and go to the Lower East Side, watch a show. And I can do that from my apartment, which is literally a mile away from this neighborhood, and not actually have to go there and deal with the crowds and all the bars. So, not that I've done that on a Saturday night instead of going to a club, but it's possible. So what do we call virtual worlds? These are online environments whose residents are avatars representing people in the real world. They're always immersive 3D environments, and very often players can create their avatar to resemble them or who they want to be, or just something that they find interesting. And so it adds another personal element to it, a little more than just like a chat session where you don't really have as much, your items of flair are your nick, and that's about it. With your avatar, you can do whatever you want. And they can be free or subscription-based. They have various models for how you pay, how you interact. And typically, they revolve around something. So it's not more than just a 3D world. There's other interactions that are possible in it. So this could be playing a massively multiplayer online game. It could be, like in the case of World of Warcraft, it could be like a music scene in the case of VLES. Or in the case of Second Life, it could be revolving around furry lap dances. Do you want to speak to this one?
This is just a slide that I stole from some website, and it's basically trying to say how many accounts there are, out in the world, and there's a ton. And if you can read it, these are different virtual worlds. So the one over on the right is Second Life. The huge one is like called Habbo or something. It's some one that I guess a lot of European teenagers use. I don't know. But you can see like there's a lot of different virtual worlds. Some are more popular than others. Some have been around longer than others. And the disc here, like starting on the left is like young kids play it, and on the right where Second Life is like more mature people play it. And so it's supposed to show you like age distribution, number of accounts. It's lots of information on one slide.
And also just think, look at, ooh, hello. And look at this. Basically, most of the, was it under 30, that's what the primary demographic is for virtual worlds. Well, they're going to get older, and so they're going to start moving into Second Life and sort of these more, sort of more adult, well, not necessarily adult, but more less game-oriented virtual worlds. And that's Second Life is where we have an economy and a lot of other things that make it differentiated from the other ones.
So yeah, that last slide was just virtual worlds where like, some people say there's virtual worlds and then there's these massively multiplayer online games and that they're different, but we sort of consider them the same. They're both basically environments you can go, and from our perspective you can exploit people there. But that last slide was only the virtual worlds where there's sort of not like a real underlying purpose, and this is where they're actual games, there's objectives and you run around, you kill things or whatever. So the green one is World of Warcraft, which of course is the most popular game right now.
Yeah.
10 million active accounts. So you come up with a decent exploit there, and you can get your 10 million computer botnet in like 5 minutes.
All right. So one thing that's different about virtual worlds is how exploits can be delivered. In a web page, basically like web malware, drive-by downloads, you usually have to go somewhere to have that content delivered to you, and usually it's a banner ad, or sometimes it's slipped into the advertising network, or it's hostile content on the web page. In the virtual world, they can come in the form of any object in that world, and so since users can control the textures on their avatars and various other things, it could be an avatar's hair color, it could be actually something like whispered into your ear, it could be an IM, it could be anything in this world, and it is harder to sort of judge the danger of something in a virtual world than going to like a kind of sketchy website.
Right. Yeah, so 5 years ago, if you emailed someone an executable, they'd probably click on it. But now, at least some people won't. So, people have sort of learned what's dangerous and what isn't. But in a virtual world, it's like totally different. It's everything is virtual, and you don't know what to trust anymore.
I read this article about, in Second Life actually, there was a Ponzi scheme with these fake ATM machines. Someone just registered some bank, and they started putting up these Second Life ATM machines, and people would just deposit lindens into them because they said, oh, we give you crazy amounts of interest. And it's hilarious how no one would do this in real life. If they saw some like cardboard cutout that had ATM scrawled on it in crayon, put money in here, they wouldn't do it. But in the virtual world, even though Linden dollars are backed by real dollars of theirs, yeah, sure, they go for it. Like 40% interest. With that, my 100 Lindens can be 140. Yeah. And so they would do things like that. So we have just less of a intuition as to what is safe and what is not. And so usually, actually, this is probably cut over, or?
I can talk about it. So so with these exploits in virtual worlds, you can do the old thing everyone does. So you can take over someone's computer, you can put in a backdoor, you can make it a bot, you can send spam from it, all the typical stuff. But there's other things you can do in this scenario that's sort of interesting, we think. So not only can you take over someone's computer, but you can take over their avatar. So you can make their avatar move around, you can make them follow you around, you can steal their money, whatever you want. And so it's just sort of a new opportunity from your regular exploits. And the thing that is interesting is, I'm not an evil guy, I'm not a bad guy, but if I took over your computer, it's not obvious how I would profit from that. Like, you know, I maybe install a keyboard sniffer, wait till you log into your bank account, I don't know. But here, it's really easy to think about how I would make money. I take over your avatar, I steal all your Linden dollars, I cash them out for real dollars, and I turn off my computer, right? So it's just a real opportunistic way to, if you're a bad guy, that you can make money quickly without having to, you know, get all messy with the way that you normally have to do things. Is this my time to talk?
I think it's your time.
Okay. So the other thing that's interesting is that people really get obsessed with their avatars. So it's sort of you know, fun to take their avatars over and do things that they don't necessarily want to do. So people can really associate themselves with their avatars. Like this woman here, you know, her avatar was assaulted by these flying penises, and you know, like I thought it was hilarious, and she actually sued the people to take down the video. So I mean, this is like, you know, what do I care if a cartoon representation of me has flying penises flying by, right? But you know, she was, you know, really offended by that. And my wife tells me this story about she knows this sex education person who went to this conference. It was like a, you know, role-playing game conference or something, and you know, he was explaining to them, you know, about like real sex education. And this guy stood up and he's like, so when I'm an elf, I can't get those diseases though, right? And the guy was like, you know, what do you mean when you're an elf? And you know, he'd always make you joking, but the guy was dead serious. He's like, no, you know, when I'm an elf, I can't get sick, right? And so anyway, like people like, you know, can really associate with their avatars, and you know, if you all of a sudden make their avatar walk around and do things that they don't want to do, you know, they can really freak out. Okay. The other thing is that you know, a lot of the stuff in like World of Warcraft, for example, is you fight people, and you know, you have to spend a long time getting ready, and you know, it's hard, and people are good at it. Well, you know, why bother with all that work if you can just take over their computer and make them stand still, and you can just walk up and take your time and kill them? And the other thing that's interesting is, you know, and for me, you know, exploits mean you take over someone's computer. A lot of people care about denial of services. I usually don't. But here's a case where denial of service can be cool. So if I can just knock you off your account, and then I can kill you while you're trying to log back on, that works too. So denial of service in virtual worlds is maybe just as useful as real exploits. The other thing, and I sort of mentioned this earlier, was you know, if there's real money associated with these virtual accounts, then it's easy to steal. So in Second Life, there's actually a way in Second Life that you can change. You can pay for Linden dollars, and you can cash them out too. And every U.S. dollar is 275 Linden dollars. World of Warcraft, you used to kind of be able to do that, but now it's sort of, you're not supposed to, but there's still ways you can do it, and there's websites that you can go to, and this is the exchange rate for that. It's about 15 gold for a U.S. dollar.
They even have a stock exchange in Second Life right now, so you can actually trade Second Life or buy stock in Second Life companies and trade them online.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about Second Life, but we're just going to say a little more about it. So it's free. If you want to own like huge pieces of land, you have to pay some monthly fee. It's supposed to be immersive, so you can create objects. You can make your avatar look however you want. You can put video and sound, so you can have like a rockin' party. You can write scripts so that the objects do things. You can talk with your voice between players. Dino was saying he was testing out the exploit the other night, and some dudes came walking by and they were talking French to each other.
Yeah.
So it's sort of interesting. And of course, you know, the reason that I was attracted to this as a target was the fact that there's real money involved. Well, sort of real money. All right, so how do you attack Second Life? Well, you know, the viewer, it's just a client program, so just like any client-side attack, you just have to find a bug. The problem is you have to get malicious data from the attacker's computer to the client. There's lots of ways you can do that. So you can design an object or clothes or your hair or whatever, and when their computer looks at you, it's going to render that data. You can chat to them. You know, just say something to them. There's actually ways in Second Life that you can ask them. You can give them a URL, and if they agree, it'll spawn a browser and take them to a website. But of course, it's sort of complicated because almost all your interactions are going to go to the Second Life server and then to the other person. So there's a sort of intermediate layer that you have to worry about. And this is what it looks like. So if I want to say hi to you know, the people in my vicinity, so I tell the server, Second Life server, hey, I want to say hi. And then the server says, hey, you know, this guy said hi to you. So you can see that it might be hard to get the right data to the victims because that data comes from the server. And there's also a chance that the Second Life servers might crash if you send malicious data intended for the victim. And also, even if you came up with an attack, if the Second Life folks figured it out, they could see the data passing through their servers and filter it, or log it and call the feds or something. So that's not good. But it's different if you try to embed multimedia into objects in Second Life. This is how it works. So the attacker will associate a media object with a URL. So Second Life doesn't want to have to hold all the media. So every movie in Second Life, they don't want to have to store that. So they let the designers hold that information. So I associate an object with the URL. Then whenever any of the victims walk near my object, the Second Life servers tell them, hey, there's media at URL. You should go get it and play it. So then the victims say, okay. They go to that URL and then they try to play it. So this is a way that the attacker can talk directly to the victim. So it doesn't have to go through the Second Life servers, which is better. So the media that's delivered is completely controlled by me, the attacker. I can choose when I want to deliver it. I can choose who I want to deliver it to. So like maybe if I see a Second Life IP address coming to my server, I don't give them the bad file. I only give the regular folks the bad file. Also, the data never goes through the Second Life server, so they don't really have insight into what I'm doing. They can't log what I'm doing. They can't filter what I'm doing. And that's really basically what happened when we reported this bug to them. Their only option was to tell people to turn off video on their clients. They could shut off video on the whole world, but they didn't want to do that. So there wasn't much they could do. All right, so that means we should probably focus our attention on multimedia in Second Life because it's the most effective way to give the data to them. What ways can you do that? Well, there's two ways basically. So generic media is handled by a QuickTime API, so they use the regular QuickTime player engine to run this. And then for just sound, pure sound, they use fmod. So what's QuickTime's relationship to Second Life? Well, it's actually completely separate. So when you download and install Second Life, it doesn't come with QuickTime or anything. You have to do that separately. Although they totally encourage you to do that. It's the only way you can watch media is to have QuickTime installed. QuickTime is pretty cool. It supports basically every image format, video format, sound format you've ever heard of except M or WMB. And everything that QuickTime supports, Second Life supports because they just are using that engine. And this is like something they're probably not even aware of, that it actually, you can, even though you're supposed to only put images there, you can actually make QuickTime run sound files too. So if you found a bug in QuickTime that rebounded on sounds, even though they intend fmod to do sounds, you could still get them with QuickTime. Okay. What's this fmod thing? I had never heard of it until we started looking at this, but it turns out it's a library that's used by basically every game. So here's a list of games that use this fmod library. So a lot of games you would have heard of. World of Warcraft and Second Life obviously do. This version of fmod is 3.7.4 that Second Life comes with. It's basically you can download the binary for free. If you want source code, you gotta pay them $1,500. So probably not worth it. It supports your basic sound format, so MP2, MP3, so on. Okay, so there's Second Life viewers, open source and all that, so you can read it, look for bugs, but like I said, because of the whole way that multimedia is done in Second Life, it's probably better to find a bug in the multimedia engines. So instead of worrying about Second Life, let's just strip out QuickTime, strip out fmod, and find bugs in those. They're only binaries, so you can still do static analysis, but I like fuzzing. So how do you fuzz these things? Well, QuickTime, you just fuzz it like you would any client program. So you could use file fuzz, spike file, whatever. You can do it on a Mac or Linux, whatever you're comfortable with. So, or Windows, I guess I didn't even mention that. Who would, what security person would use Windows? And then fmod, same thing. So you can download. There's an API for it. It comes with a little sample app which I modified, and you can fuzz. So, and this is what it looks like. You can just run this little program on millions and millions of these fuzzed MP3s or whatever, and you can try to find bugs that way.
So
But we didn't have to do that. Luckily, QuickTime has plenty of bugs. If you just wait around long enough, someone will find one for you.
So yeah, we chose to use a QuickTime vulnerability for this. One, well, I'd like to point out that, so none of you are watching the demo live, which I'm very disappointed in, but someone did show up and they're from Linden, and they're just standing there.
Yeah, so it says, my name is Harry Linden, and there's like, it's like this little robot-looking guy. So
yeah,
you'll see him when the demo comes. Hopefully he doesn't try to do something to hurt our demo.
Yeah, we marked off the location. It's very, very secure. Okay, so we use QuickTime. One, because I like QuickTime vulnerabilities. The other is that this exploit was just very well behaved, and this vulnerability can best be described as, 1993 called and they want their bug back. It's a stack overflow in just in a header value, like in the RTSP response. Vanilla, and basically it's a straight Stack Overflow, very easy. But Apple's done some things. They've compiled QuickTime with stack canaries with stack protection called /GS and Microsoft Visual Studio. So what that does is, if you overwrite, close to the return address, basically the runtime will detect this and it'll just terminate the application. Give you a big pop-up that says a buffer overflow has been detected, so on, bad things, bad things. But if anyone knows about kind of exploiting /GS compiled binaries, you'll know that they didn't really fix the whole exception handler problem, because structured exception handling frames are also stored on the stack. And so what you can do is you can just overwrite that exception handler and then just run off the top of the stack or have something else crash in that thread. And then what happens is your exception handler is called before the one that handles that detects the overwritten return address. And so since you're getting your own exception handler filter called, you have control anyway. So basically that's kind of what we do. But Apple is also pretty good. There's a thing called SafeSCH, another compiler extension that Microsoft supports. What that does is that embeds the list of all exception handlers in a given module, like a DLL or an executable, into a list into that file. And so basically, if you're going to jump into an exception handler in that file, what the runtime does is it makes sure that it's one of those registered ones. And this is called SafeSCH. And the important point is to remember that it's DLL specific. So basically, if a DLL has been compiled with this, then you can't jump into arbitrary places in it. So, Apple compiled most of QuickTime with SafeSCH. And it's one of those things like horseshoes and hand grenades, close doesn't really count. So if they miss one module, that means you can get control. So that's what we do. So we just overwriting the stack return address will trigger the warning. So we just go up the entire stack segment. So we just run off the top, triggers the exception, causes our overwritten SCH frame to get used, calling our exception filter, bouncing through, blah, 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 nothing but nets, so on. All right. Actually, I'll let you talk about this stuff.
All right. So we at this point we have a QuickTime exploit, and we want to turn it into a Second Life exploit. And I should mention that there's nothing specific about this particular exploit in this process. So anytime you see a bug reported in QuickTime, you can always follow this to turn it into a Second Life bug. Okay. So the first thing, and I had never really used Second Life before this, and so if you're like a Second Life pro, you'll laugh at this, but it took me like probably longer to figure out how to like make these objects and stuff than to actually do the exploit. So the first thing you do is you create an object, and there's the little GUI for creating it and stuff, and then you're like, well, how am I going to get people to see it? And so you either want to make it like really interesting, like there's an incredible amount of pornography in Second Life, so you make it like in the middle of a picture of people doing things to each other, and people will probably wander up to it. The other thing is, or make it very non-interesting, so they don't even see it. They just wander by, and they see it. For us, it's a pink box. Hey, look, he's got like a sign.
What's that? You want to go up there?
So this Harry Linden guy is holding a sign.
Hello, Shmoocon. Nice.
Hey, cool.
Tell him we'll put him on the screen in a minute.
Yeah, here you do that while
All
I'm
right,
talking.
okay.
So there's even like more tricky things you can do, and I just found this out recently. You can actually take your object that is the exploit. So remember, the cool thing about these virtual worlds is objects are exploits here, right? So this little pink box is an exploit. And you know, and it can be anything besides a box, but you can take it and you can actually put it underground, so you can't even see it, but you'll still get exploited by it. You walk by it, and the computer still thinks, oh look, there's an object with multimedia, and you get exploited, and you didn't even see anything. So it's crazy. Okay. The other thing is, if you want multimedia on these objects, which is what we want, you have to make it tell it to play. And you don't want the user to have to press play, which is sort of by default. But there's this scripting language in Linden, so you can make objects do things. And it's sort of like C, except it's entirely event-driven. And this is basically the script that we associate with our exploit. And all it says is, as soon as anyone touches it, make it play a video, and start a timer such that every second it starts the video. So basically, anytime you walk onto our land, within a second, so depending on when this timer happened to been initialized, within a second the movie will start, and then you'll get exploited. Okay, so we have an object, and then this is how you associate a URL with an object. So if you see this little, I don't know if you can see here. Right here, you can see it says RTSP : so that's the bad part. And then over on the right is the script. You embed that onto the object, and then the next person to walk along with, and this was, there was a couple weeks when we did this when it really was a 0 day, and there was no patch. So basically, anyone who wandered by would get owned by it. But now this QuickTime bug's fixed, so I have a purposely old version of QuickTime on this machine for the exploitor. But again, since the time when we did this like 2 months ago, and now there's been, since in that time in between, there's been a QuickTime bug that was a 0 day for like 2 weeks. Yeah. So it comes and it goes.
There's another RTSP, exactly. Yeah.
It was yeah.
All right. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what the sort of exploit development for Second Life, and what about Second Life makes it such a wonderful development platform for many things virtual and exploits as well. Second Life is open source, which is one of the other things that we thought was really cool about it. So you can compile your own version. We'll see the source code to see how everything works. Like I compiled my own with debugging symbols, and so it's much easier to write an exploit when you have debugging symbols. It's just so much easier, especially when it's a complex application, and you have no idea why it's crashing or what's going on. You just look at the stack trace, look at the source code, you're done. It's easy. And so basically the process was, try things out, develop the exploit against the debugging build, and then once I have something that's solid, move it to the off-the-shelf downloadable version. And so one example why this is so easy, or this is so useful, is at one point it crashes. So after get code executing, it'll crash, giving an error saying, it's like an assertion failure. It's like, whoa, I don't know what's going on. I'm just stopping, and it says LL fast timer s cur depth is not equal 0. And that makes no sense, and it goes into like a busy loop and crashes. And so if you have debug symbols, you just say, oh, okay, what's the address for that symbol? Oh, you're right, it's not 0. Let's make it 0, and then it's fine. So it makes getting what's called continuation of execution much easier. Also we used a lot of stuff from Metasploit because it has a lot of very good tools right off the shelf. Portable functions to write assembly code for you, shellcode encoders, and some really K-rad, sorry to go back to 1993, DLL injection payloads and stuff like that. And so the big thing that we wanted from this was continuation of execution. We want to take over our target's avatar, and basically it does us no good if the application crashes. And unfortunately, exploits are messy. I mean, especially the Stack Overflow. You're just overwriting memory willy-nilly. You're overwriting exception handlers. You're running off the top of the stack of the main thread, no less. And so basically, that's if your main thread is hosed, your application just dies. And so it's you have to kind of really do something application specific to keep the thing running.
Yeah, you would think. I mean, originally we thought that the thread that was handling all these QuickTime movies, it would be its own thread. We could just exit thread and we'd be done. Yeah. But it turns out it's the main thread is the one that's doing this. So as soon as you start doing things, the victim's computer basically, or their client freezes because you're in control of the only thread that as important, really.
Yeah, exactly. So how the application is built is there's the main event handling loop. And basically just any object that needs updating just sets a flag, it goes onto a queue, and the main loop is just pulling things off the queue saying, oh, this object needs updating, this object needs updating, I got a key event, just process all these. And so one of those is the QuickTime media has been updated. And so it says, oh, update that, exploit happens. While our payload's doing something, the whole world freezes, which is not exactly subtle and stealthy, which is kind of makes it not as cool. And so what, the question was, can we rebuild the context and keep the thing running? And so this is what I call a second life support. It keeps it running, keeps it alive until the very end, then it just kind of dies a horrible death. But because I could probably fix that also, I just didn't really bother.
It doesn't die sometimes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I bet it won't die this time.
Right, we'll see.
It only used to die when you would exit at the end of, you're done playing Second Life and you go to exit. Sometimes it would die, but it doesn't even always do that.
Oh, nice. At least for me, usually when I exit, it just exits quickly. So if you don't know, that's it crashing. So I should have mentioned that. So what we do is, it doesn't really matter that we're still executing in a exception handling filter context. This is kind of like a signal handler. It's special. It's actually not that special in Windows. It's just kind of gives it a new stack and stuff. So we just basically jump to the main loop again and just keep pulling down events. And if we do that and do some fix-ups to some global variables like the what's called s current depth, basically is kind of what it uses for its timers to make sure that it's not being re-entrant. Well, if we just fool it saying, yeah, you're executing within yourself again, but don't worry about it, it'll be fine. It just keeps running. And it's great, is that everything that we've been able to do keeps working. And what this allows us to do is just inject the payload DLL completely silently. There's no pause in the game. You just keep on going, and you have the Metasploit payload can take as long as it needs to send that DLL over. It gets injected, it can sit there and wait, it can do whatever it wants, and we just have this subversive agent running in your Second Life viewer that lets us do whatever we want to you or your avatar or your computer. And it wouldn't be one of my presentations if I didn't have a overly dense slide full of information that no one's going to be able to absorb in 30 seconds anyway, but I think I just put it up there. Just kind of show it's really not that complicated. Just jump forward, jump back, call a new thread, so that basically the new thread executes at the bottom of the payload, which will go on to the Metasploit.
So the new thread is the Metasploit payload, and then what he's going to say next is to
yeah.
main loop.
Yeah, so yeah, like Charlie said, new thread does that. Just need to give it a little more stack space because the Metasploit payloads assume that they can write forward up the stack to a certain extent, because usually that's the case. But when you're executing directly out of a new thread, you have like 132 bytes, really not much space at all. So just give it some stack space. And then, while that new thread has started, we basically patch up the sCurrent depth variable and just call the main loop. And, call exit process at the end, but that doesn't really clean things up nicely because I have to call a Second Life specific exit function. But didn't do that yet. So was that clear for everyone? If not, here's a picture. So it shows LL media impl is a media implementation object. It fires an event saying, I need an update. Jumps into the QuickTime movies task, which does whatever needs to be done for the movie. So in this case, it's download from the RTSP server and and start the movie. And then at that point, the little red X means the exploit happens. Bad stuff happens. It gets totally confused. And so we basically fork off into a new thread that executes the payload on the far right, and then just jump back into the main loop. So it's conceptually pretty simple. And so now we have Second Life running, Metasploit. The Second Life viewer running totally cleanly, no issues, and we can execute any Metasploit payload that we want. And there's literally 1,000 of them. So you can choose whichever one you want. But popping a shell, that's so 1999. DLL injection I find way more interesting because we can code up whatever we want, something application specific, and then just throw that in. And then just wait.
All right, so now we can do whatever we can inject any DLL we want into the process, and the question is what do we put in this DLL? And writing a DLL in C is way easier than writing big nasty shell code in assembly. Again, we could take over the machine, but we want to do something a little more clever. We want to take over their avatar. There's basically two ways you can do it. You can either, while you're running in the context of Second Life, send the packets to the Second Life server that make it think you're doing things, or you can just make the Second Life viewer, you can just call the functions that do the things you want in the Second Life viewer and let it handle all the packets. So if you want to send the game packets, you could certainly do that. Just watch the traffic, figure out what's going on. There's even some documentation on the internet from before Second Life was open source. But it's going to be tough because each one has to be formed specially. If there's more than one packet required or an exchange, you have to keep track of that. You have to worry about using the sockets that are already there. The actual traffic itself is actually kind of nasty. It's all UDP, and it's like, depending on where you are in the world, it's going to different servers and stuff. So we didn't do this. What we did was we decided we would just call the functions inside the Second Life client and have it do everything for us. And again, these are not APIs. These are not intended to be called except by functions that are compiled at the same time as it. But that doesn't mean we can't do it. Second Life is C++. So actually most of the functions are methods of classes. So it's a little more complicated. You can't just call a function and hope it'll work. Because there's going to be like global variables, you have to make the arguments right, there could be other class members that screw you up. So what we did is we just wrote our payload in C++, compiled it into a DLL, and then used Metasploit to inject it. All right, so how do you call these functions? Well, to figure out what function to call, you can either hook a debugger to Second Life and do something that you want to have done and then see what gets called. Or you can just look through the source code or use IDA, look through the disassembly. Or some combination thereof. Usually I just grep through the source code and they're pretty good about coming up with function names that are pretty descriptive. And then you got to go and figure out what other dependencies there are to make it so where you can call these functions. So is it a class? What global variables is used? What kind of arguments does it have? That sort of stuff. And I'll give you some examples of that. So there was one function I always wanted to call, but someone talked me out of it. So it's called like remove all clothes or something like that. Go ahead.
We don't want everyone to leave. We're just going to say that our demo doesn't use that function.
Yeah.
But it's still interesting.
Yeah. But anyway, so that's the idea is, if you can just look through the source and you'll find functions named like that, and you're like, that sounds like a good one to call. Okay. So how do you do this? Well, this is an example. So I want to call the function getBalance, which says how much money a person has. This is so. It turns out that this function actually gets inlined in the binary, so it's not actually even a function. And this is, Lyndon is talking to us. He said we can have a good conference. Anyway, if you look in the middle there, it says, which you can actually hear me. Anyway, so if you look in the second little box there, it moves a certain thing that I've told IDA is called G status bar. It moves it into variable EAX, and then and then that's it. And then it dereferences one F0 from that. So G status bar is some structure or class, and then there's some member, some offset from it, and it just dereferences that. And so once you see how it works, then you can go and write the C code like that and get the same exact value. So I steal the address out of the binary, and by the way, that means our payload is going to be dependent on the version of Second Life. So if you want to get exploited by us, you have to have the exact same version. So that I get that address, I add an offset to it and dereference it, and now I have the balance. I know how much money the person has in 2 lines of C. All right, so that was easy. What if it's a little more complicated? So this is the function that tells me it tells a client to give money to another person, which is I want them to give money to me. So you declare a function pointer. So this is exactly out of their source code what it looks like. Well, not exactly, but it's real close. And then you use a debugger to see how this thing gets called. And this first argument is unsigned n-star UUID, and this is the unique ID for every person. So I used a debugger and saw what one was, and another character I have named Pone Naglo, he has this particular UID, so I copy that into a buffer. And then this next argument is called region. I don't know what the hell that is, but it's always at this spot in memory, so I just grab it. So now I know all my arguments, so I just set my function pointer to be the address of this function in memory, and then I call it. And then the last two arguments there, one was just some hard-coded thing in the binary, so I know it's always right, because that's just what they used every time, so I'll use it too. And the final thing is just some C++ string that they had that happens to not have any data. And so you call this, and it works. All right. This is an example. So they're getting increasingly complex, and really the reason I was less persuaded by someone who told me not to do take off your clothes function as I was that it was the most complicated function you can imagine. So we're getting a little more complex here, but this one's slightly more complex. So there's this send chat from viewer, and that's if you want to make the person say something. So you reverse engineer it, and this one and the last one had this too. There's these C++ strings, and these aren't just car stars. These are complicated, well, somewhat complicated data structures, and this is basically what they look like. There's 4 bytes. I don't know what it is. It doesn't matter. And then there's a pointer to a string, or it's sort of like a enum where it can either be a pointer to a string, or if it's a very short string, they just put it right there into the structure. And then there's a linked, and then there's something on the end. I don't know what it is, but F seems to work fine. And that's the fun of reverse engineering is you don't have to know how things work. You just have to know how they work well enough to do what you want to do. All right, so then this is a string that says I've been hacked. And so it's, if you can read ASCII or binary, you can get the idea. So this is how you set it up. This is how I make a C++ string. So I malloc it. I set some of my things, like I said before, length of the string, and then I set up a function pointer and I call the function, and it works. Do we have time for this, or should we do this?
9:40. Yeah, we have 5 more minutes.
Okay, so I'll bore you with one more example before the demo. You're my prisoner now. So the other ones, they started to get complicated with that structure I had to build up, but this example shows things can get really complicated. So those I could call basically straight up as functions, and this is I have to call it as a method of a class. And the difference is that in C++, if you look at a disassembled C++ program, the class is the this pointer of the class is usually passed in the ECX register, and so you have to, and then they use that to get information from about the class. And so these functions, this function I want to call called start currency by, which happens to be the function that if you have you're online and you really want that furry lap dance and you only have 5 lindens and it costs 100 lindens, you can use your credit card and you can buy more lindens. And so this is what that function does. So this would be useful for us because if they happen to already have a credit card registered with Linden, you can just call this and have them charge $10,000 worth of lindens and then steal it. So this is a good function and why I spent a little time looking at it. So anyway, so we have to set it up so that in ECX, when we call this function, there's all these right data structures set up so that the function will actually make it, which is a pain. Okay, so and then this is just an example of what I said actually happens. So this is the function start currency by. You can see this right here. So it moves ECX into ESI, which is and then it starts doing things off of ESI down there. So that's it setting up, or it's moving things into members of its class. And so you have to make sure when this function gets called that we have something in ECX that can be dereferenced like that. So this is what we do. Luckily, again, open source helped us, so I could copy their class that was the definition of their class, and then I just make sure that I set it up sort of like they do. And Okay, so I can set up a fake class, and then I just have to make sure it ends up in ECX. And the way I do that is I just make sure that I call in my DLL, I make sure it's in a class, and then I'm calling it, so instead of just calling a fake function pointer, now I'm calling a fake method. And then everything works out great. And this is the actual code that does it. So sets up the fake class, and any one of these things that isn't there, the thing will crash because it tries to dereference it or it tries to copy into it or whatever. And then LL wrapper is the thing that calls the method. All right. So what's the payload look like in the end? Well, it's a DLL, and it calls functions within the Second Life client, and you could optionally get money from the credit card of the person. Then you figure out how much money they can spend, and then you give all that money to a person, you probably, and then you have the person shout something. And that's what the DLL that we have looks like. So anyway, I guess it's time for the demo.
I'm gonna hook it up there.
Yeah. So pretty soon you guys will be able to see old Harry here. Very sporting of them, I think, too.
Yeah. We have a shout out to Lyndon being good sports about this. We are trying to help you.
All right. So.
So you can see we were good Second Life citizens. The dangerous area is cordoned off by a sign saying "Warning: Exploitation in Progress." And at the bottom, you can see we have.
Hold on a second.
Okay.
My mouse was not responding there. Let me try it again. There we go. Can you see it?
Yep.
All right.
Okay. And so we have the Metasploit window. Right here, we're going to run the Metasploit command line interface. Basically, to my QuickTime exploit, I'm going to use the DLL payload. We give it the IP address of the server to connect back to for the subsequent stages.
Show them the pink box.
Oh yeah, the pink box. That's important too. This right here is the most evil pink box you'll ever see in your life. Everyone thinks these pink boxes are totally innocuous, but no, they're seriously bad. And so that is the object that has our QuickTime video as a texture. And so basically, whenever you're in range of that object, which happens to be about 200 feet in a virtual world, you can get owned. So and also it's also important to note, you don't have to be able to see it. Like I think we mentioned this earlier, you can put it underground as long as you are on the same land that texture is.
You can build a house and put it inside, like the refrigerator inside the house, and you would still get owned.
Yeah, as long as you're within 200 virtual feet of it. So, but it's a little more subtle when you walk into the house, and also they take a lot more time to build the house. And as we said, we're not really that great at Second Life building stuff. But a pink box, yeah. But a pink box is well within our capabilities.
All right, so shall I do it? So I started the Metasploit server, and then I'm just going to walk into the land here between the signs, and then just take my fingers off the keyboard so I'm not pressing anything. And if it works, you'll see stuff happen in the Metasploit window, and then you'll see the person shout. And you'll see that the money's been given too, but you won't actually, it'll say like, you have given money to. And all you can do is hit OK. Like, it's not like, no, I didn't mean to do that. OK, so here it goes.
All right, got a connection. The stager is being loaded.
Oh, yeah.
Upload is complete. You shout, "I've got hacked," and you pay the money. So now walk around a little bit.
And I can still walk around and do whatever I want.
So basically, Second Life is running fine, no issues. So except for the whole fact that you gave someone money, you have no idea that anything's wrong.
And obviously we didn't have to do that. And if you're really tricky, you could probably make that not even show up. You could like intercept that packet that came back, and so they didn't even see that. But then what would be the fun of the demo if you didn't know anything happened? And so the other thing that's funny is that now we're running in the context of an execution handler too.
Yeah.
You just can't tell. Everything still runs normal, but things are far from normal.
The main thread is totally messed up at this point, but it's still alive.
And if you look, I have 0 Linden dollars now.
Oh.
I used to have 5,000
Yeah,
something.
up in the upper right corner.
Yeah.
All right.
It could be running, but we exited. So we injected the DLL. The DLL, in this case, just ran those 3 or 4 functions and exited,
Yeah.
or returned, actually.
So
but we could have had a different DLL that waited for responses, or bound to shell, or whatever.
Yeah, one thing that's important is because we create a new thread to run the actual Metasploit payload, you got to specify exit func equals thread so that that new thread exits cleanly when it's done. Because otherwise it'll cause an exception, or and that'll crash the entire thing. So that causes that to exit cleanly, and we can, our DLL runs out of a DLL main. So basically, it spawns a new thread once it gets loaded, and just does its thing. And so we could keep it running. Like I tested this a lot with Meterpreter. So you could keep Meterpreter running and then use that to load a Second Life specific attack, and basically build a remote control interface for the Second Life client, and just stay in there doing whatever you want. While you're pillaging their machine, you just do other things. You can do whatever you want. Any more questions?
How simple is it for a character to get a credit card if they take? The Fury will sell real money if you just keep on creating your avatars and giving your real character money from the avatar you just created. That avatar doesn't beg for that avatar away, and you have an avatar with it.
The question was, how simple is it to give avatars credit card numbers? And I think you're kind of getting at kind of money laundering in Second Life. Every avatar has to be, like, if you can receive Linden dollars without having a credit card on file, but obviously to cash out, it needs to be tied to a real world identity. And to buy Lindens, you have to use a credit card, which also links you to a real world identity.
And they also say that they keep track of every financial transaction in Second Life, and that was what they said when we reported this exploit, was to make people happy. Like, yeah, you might get exploited, but we keep track of that, and we'll give you your money back. So, in theory, in your question, they would be able to follow the money around and see where it eventually was deposited, and you might still get busted.
They're taking the same approach as banks, basically. Like, if your credit card gets stolen, you basically get your bank account emptied. Your bank will usually give you your money back, because otherwise people would lose faith in the whole banking system. I saw a question back there. Yes.
I thought if you were going to launch a media object, you needed permission from the user, but I didn't see any of that.
Yeah, no, you only the first time, basically, that that the avatar sees a QuickTime object in their entire life, it says, there's a QuickTime, or there's a media object here. Would you like to enable media? And that's permanent. So if you say yes, because usually it's them wanting to watch some other video, or even on the Welcome Island, they walk up to something and they're like, oh, cool, it's watching a movie in 3D, and you say yes. So basically, 99% of people are going to say yes then and forget that it's enabled. So after that, you never have to enable it.
So you can turn it off. So it's play streaming video when available. That is the killer here. And like he said, the first time you encounter media, it'll ask you, do you want to watch this or do you want to disable media? And it won't let you move on until you pick one of those two. And then once you pick that, it's good until you either forever or until you click off one of these boxes in the preferences.
Oh, sorry, right there.
You extend the range of the objects to the ditto lane, you expect it on the head on the lens, somebody flew over,
The question is, can we extend the range of the object? So if we own more land, people could get owned if they flew over it, or just so as best we can tell, the range of an object is 200 feet, and that's kind of what the game uses. So
but you could put multiple objects on a big piece of
true.
land.
Yes, sure.
And then you could make like a little, grid.
A minefield, essentially.
Yeah, minefield,
Yeah.
such that you can traverse it without getting near enough to one of the objects. And you can make them float and stuff too, so you can even make it like a 3D sort of minefield.
Yeah, and the So, yeah, Chris?
I was just asking you to embed any of the videos in the actual site itself.
No, so this is sort of interesting. Hopefully it won't own me again. Here, let me turn it off.
Turn the exploit off.
Yeah. So you can there's two different kind of there's in the objects. So you can go up and this is an object I created and I can like wear it. So attached to my hand. So I can carry it around. But the problem, so this would have been like awesome if I could just walk around and exploit people. The problem is as soon as you leave your land, it loses the association with the media. So it's no longer dangerous.
Yeah.
And so you can make clothes that had the exploit as well. Like this is kind of like clothes, right? But the problem is it's only dangerous when you're on, see now it's alive again. So it's only dangerous when you're on land that you own. But if the bug was different, if it wasn't multimedia bug, it was like more of a rendering bug, then yeah, you could make clothes that
If you can upload a texture, like uploading a texture for the Shmoocon shorts.
Right.
We're taking pre-orders for those.
Yeah.
$10 each.
$5 Linden a pair of shorts. And actually her shirt is a Shmoocon shirt, but you never get to actually see
Isn't
her.
there's a key you can press to like do a fly around.
Yeah, I don't know.
Who knows? We don't know. We don't really know Second Life. Does anyone know how you can do the
Oh, here we go.
view?
Camera controls. I bet I can do it with this. Oh. You have to like actually know what you're doing. Oh, almost.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
The
Look at
Shmoocon
that.
shirt.
That's a styling shirt there.
Yeah, you can order that too.
It's a little tight though.
Hope she can breathe. What was I going to say? I totally forgot. Oh yeah, sorry. Distracted. Textures. If the bug was in like, you can upload a texture like the Shmoocon shirt, and it gets pasted onto your avatar. So if it's a bug in like an image file format, like there's none of those, basically you can take that wherever you go. And so anywhere, on any piece of land, anyone that sees you.
All right.
All right,
Looks like we're out of time.
Any more questions? Talk to us afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Very nice. Good job. Thank you.
Thanks. Entertaining at least.
Yeah, no, the demo worked.
Yeah, that's good. Hey, how you doing?
Their avatar, they only spread the object to other people.
Absolutely. Yes.
Create a box.
Yeah, you can
Oh,
make
yeah,
sort of a worm that way. Is you can make it to where next time they're on their land,
They
they
drop an object and they send you one again.
right, and then it also makes the next person pick up an object and like, yeah,
Oh, hey, right.
that's the closest you can do to like sort of a wormable thing with this. Oh well, thanks.
I've been trying to get our security